This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent, but this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
Welcome, everybody, to A Silent War Within. Today, we have a very special host. Just like last week, we're not going to call her a guest. We're going to call her a co-host because my co-host is out again. She had some family issues that she had to go deal with, and unfortunately, she was not able to be with us today. And this was one she was really excited about. So I hate that she's missing it, but we're going to press on as always. So I want to introduce you to our very special guest host today, Miss Shayla Montgomery, also known as Flight Nurse Shay. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to get into our discussion today.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time. So tell us a little bit about you, where you come from, what your career journey has been so far.
Sure. So I'm a nurse paramedic, so I've got experience in both of those things. I've been flying for the past 7 years, so pretty heavy into flight for the majority of my EMS career. I'm originally from New York. I grew up there, I went to college there, and then I moved to Arkansas, and that's where I really started my nursing career. And I currently live now in Minnesota. I fly for LifeLink. It's an amazing program, which is kind of why I ended up here, braving these cold winters. But so far, it's been really good, and so now I fly up here in the north.
Oh, that's awesome. So how did you start paramedic or did you start nurse and then move into those roles?
So I actually started paramedic. I got my EMT. I started working as an EMT. And then right before I was going to finish, I got into nursing school unexpectedly because I had applied, and my family member that was in EMS said, you're going to make way more money as a nurse. So if you want to fly, you might as well go the nursing route. So I ended up getting my RN as well, and got right into an ICU and worked in the ER, worked in the CVICU. And then ultimately I did end up finishing my paramedic and working on a ground truck as well. So I've done a little bit of all of it, but I did end up having to do a bridge ultimately to finish.
Okay.
But yeah, I never really wanted to be in the hospital. I loved what I learned in the hospital, but my heart was always pre-hospital in the field and not wanting to be inside all day. So I always knew I was going to end up in EMS. That was the goal.
Yeah, you definitely did. So when did you kind of have the realization that, yeah, this is adrenaline filled and yeah, we do a lot of training for it, but when did you kind of get the idea that, hey, this job's really heavy, and it takes that emotional toll that we talk about a lot on our show, because that emotional toll can be huge for some, and I'm sure with you, how long have you been in this profession total? Nursing, paramedic?
13 years, I think, 14, something like that.
So I know in my 20 years, I have seen friends unfortunately take their own lives, and that was some of the highlights that showed me that the emotional toll is real. It's there. Not only that, but the things I've dealt with. So what was it for you?
I don't think I had like a major realization, honestly. I think since I started working as an EMT since I was 18, it was almost like all I knew as a career. So I do almost think getting in it so young maybe like conditioned my brain a little bit to think this is just normal. And I think I've always had like a pretty good resiliency to it. So I think it was when I got on the flight side though, like the realization of like the responsibility weighed a little bit heavier. Just having more access to tools and interventions, and it's just you and your partner, and you have that on the paramedic side as well. But I think when you move up in like responsibility too, it takes more of a toll because you feel more responsible.
Yeah, I can see that. Have you seen anything in your peers that you just were able to see from a distance and go, "Oh, that guy's not doing good"? Or just recently, the fireman that rode with me on the what has now become kind of an infamous story of my child drowning that really changed and altered my career moving forward, reached out to me and he's like, I knew you were changed that day, because he saw the episode where I talked about it, and he reached out to me and was like, I knew you were changed that day, but I never said anything. So have you had that? from a distance kind of look at your peers and going like, that guy's not okay?
Oh, definitely. I think that looks a little bit different even depending on like if they're gonna have a short term or a long term issue. I've been able to see it like, okay, after a call, I know my partner needs some time. And I think when you notice patterns is when it's longer. So I think the first thing when you notice in a coworker is when you start to notice their habits change. They don't come into work and they're not super excited. They're not getting their
Mhm.
shift check done. They're not wanting to sit and talk with everybody as much, kind of become recluse. I think those are the first things that you notice is a deviation in what you would consider as normal for your partner. I think that's when you know there may be a long-term issue that they're not dealing with. But I think sometimes we have acute issues where it's not necessarily that they're going to need to deal with something long term, but they need a mental break temporarily so that it doesn't get worse. And I think a lot of those, for me, I see with because I don't have children, but I see it when I fly with a partner who has a kid the same age as a patient that we
Mhm.
fly with, and I've seen that one a few times on a different calls where it didn't affect me at all, and then I looked over at my partner and I was like, "Oh, okay, wait a second. Their whole demeanor has changed." And so I try and be a
Mhm.
little more cognizant if I think that it's evoking something personal in them, especially with like a child.
And I'm glad that you said that you've seen things that didn't necessarily bother you, but it bothered your partner. And I think that's one of the things that in one of our very early episodes, we had paramedic Sophie on with us, and she was really hitting on the fact that she's kind of the same way. Like there's certain things that probably should bother her that just doesn't. And I think one of the things that she mentioned is it's really important that we also normalize that response too, because some things are going to affect people entirely differently than you or I or
Mhm.
a plethora of other people. And you're right about the kid thing, man. When you got kids that are that age and you go pick up that 5-year-old for me, I have a 5-year-old and a 14-year-old. So when I go pick up kids that are that age, and thankfully I'm a leader now and not really on the active truck except from time to time now, it's just hard. It's hard when you have children that age. So, and I really appreciate you saying that it's okay for you to some providers not to take things as harshly as others. So have you had an experience yourself that you were like, "Oh, that was pretty rough"? That's one question. I'll kinda move into the next one, after you kinda answer that one.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like we could go 5 or 6 different ways right
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, so the first thing you talked about, I think it's okay to be okay too. There's a saying like it's okay not to be okay.
Mhm.
Can shout out some of our other mental health advocates in the field, stay fit for duty. That's one of his favorite sayings. But, I think it's okay to not have that response as well, as long
Mhm.
as you know that you're still acting baseline, it's not affecting you at home outside of work. For me, I think I have a little bit more resiliency for some reason, things don't affect me as much, but how I know that it's affecting me is I get in a bad mood temporarily. So when something shouldn't be bothering me and all of a sudden I'm just so annoyed or so inconvenienced, I'm like, "Wait, why? Oh, it's because I'm processing the really hard shift I had." So that's
Yeah.
my cue. It's always been that way with family members too. I'll be like, "Oh, if I'm in a bad mood for a little bit, just be patient with me because that's actually me processing like kind of what a hard day was." So those are my little cues and I tend to know them and like let my friends or family know ahead of time if that's why. And I'm like, it'll pass. If it doesn't, then you can be worried. But that's my temporary processing default is I'm just so annoyed right now. And it's because I just,
Yeah.
it's empathy too. I think sometimes if you don't always have an issue or you're not super bothered, sometimes it can be mistaken as you lack empathy, but that's not the case at all. And I think that's how mine kind of like shows is that I just kind of feel bad for a little bit and then I'll be okay and I'll come around the next day and it's fine. But yeah, I just tend to be a little more irritable when I have a bad
Yeah.
shift. And I think
Yeah.
that's my empathy. Certain calls though, so what it is for me usually is I could knock on wood, but I've been doing, I've been in EMS 13 or 14 years, and I've not gotten to a point where I've like had to step back from the career or anything as major as that. But what happens for me is I remember a little thing about a call that will stick with me forever. And I almost look at that as like what would be a good word for it? It's like a memoir of the event
Mm-hmm.
that keeps it real for me, and how I don't completely disassociate, because I can be really good at disassociation. I think a lot of us in EMS are good at that.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember
Very good.
something, and when I think of it, it touches me, it makes me sad, but to me, that's like the humanization of it as well. For example, I we had a pediatric drowning of an 8-year-old, and the one thing that I remember is he had Birkenstock tan lines on his feet, and I had
Mm.
Birkenstock tan lines on my feet too, and I just looked at his little feet with his little tan lines and knew he had been playing outside all summer, having the best summer, and that was like, ugh, the one thing I remember. Now when I see little Birkenstock tan lines on someone's feet, I remember him. And so I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing though, to like almost have a moment of silence for the people that we touch and to remember them. As long as it's not affecting us in a way that inhibits us from doing our jobs. But
Yeah.
I think it's okay to like take those little memories and find a little bit of solace in the work that we do in those ways.
I think that is such a beautiful way to look at that. That is the human side of what we do. I think so often we kind of get hardened hearts a little bit and we shut down and we isolate ourselves from any feeling of anything. So for you to say, yes, I'm okay with certain things and that's okay. And then to also say that like there's those little things that I take from patients and remember, and it's kind of an honorary thing to their life. So I really like that. I might adopt that actually. That's
Yeah.
really good. And if you're listening to it, that's a really good perspective. So thanks for that. That was really
Oh, for
good.
sure.
One of the things that I have always found, and even though I'm a bigger guy, I've been on a few flights and worked in a critical care setting. So one of the things that I really think when you talk about air EMS and helicopter EMS and even fixed wing is you're there with that patient, a very isolated. It's you and your partner. And obviously, from an EMS side, we're kind of used to that. But do you feel like that being in an aircraft with a really critical patient intensifies that mental load at all? Or
Um,
has it just become so
Yeah, I
so
feel like for me
practiced to you that it's not a thing
it's
anymore?
so practiced. And I think this weighs a little bit heavier when you first start, because you're feeling overwhelmed not just by the new medicine, but also trying to learn all the aviation side too.
Oh
So it's a
yeah.
huge responsibility. It's not just
Hmm.
a promotion of sorts. You're now having to learn a whole new concept you probably knew nothing about. So I think there's a lot of mental stress on our new clinicians, which is, if you want a side quest, a huge reason why I feel strongly about having a safe green on green policy and really being fair to our new flight nurses and medics while they adjust, so that we don't put them in a situation where they make a mistake that will haunt them the rest of their career. So side quest there on have not putting new people with new people, because it does change the environment a ton. You're now, and especially, and now, nurses and paramedics, I'm not comparing, we have the same scope usually in most programs. Everybody
Hmm.
comes with a skill set, and eventually you're going to learn each other's. But in the beginning, most nurses are just not accustomed to the EMS setting. They're used to different operational order in the hospital. And now you're throwing them in an environment where they're solely responsible for making these decisions with new skills that they probably haven't done, airway skills, ventilator management, all these things. And then
Hmm.
you put them in a tiny little box that's flying, and it's a safety concern. So I think that it, it just is what it is. Nurses a lot of times have a bigger adaptation because they have to learn the EMS side if they don't have that EMS experience.
Right.
And that, I think, can be mentally challenging. And nobody wants to come to their job and be like, I'm not good at this, because you're not a brand new nurse or medic. So it stinks to come in and now be like, am I good at this yet? Like, you don't want to mess up, you don't want to hurt people. So I think there's a lot of mental load on our new clinicians that we do well to give them a lot of time to acclimate.
So that's one of the things that in leadership I had to learn very quickly is that no green on green. And we implemented that and we saw a huge change because previously we were putting, whoever was available with whoever was available. And sometimes that would be that really green nurse that had been in the job for 3 or 4 months. And it really
Mhm.
didn't go well most of the time. You usually had people that were, by the time they had orientated a few shifts, they were ready to, exit because they felt like they weren't doing anything right. And it's because they didn't have that leadership style, somebody with experience to kind of lead them along. So I think that's a really good point that you made. And I like the fact that you called it green on green. I'd not heard that. I just stole it. So I'll use that from here on
For
out.
sure.
That's really good.
Yeah, they need to be able to fail knowing that their failure won't cost somebody else
Yes.
to suffer. That's the big
Yes.
thing. It's you will fail, and even as experienced clinicians, we're going to fail too at certain points. But the whole idea is they should fail with a backup. They shouldn't ever have to fail with somebody new that they don't feel like can back them up yet. Just crew safety, patient safety for sure.
Well, that is good. That is good. So do you think that, and this is just a side note, do you think that that truly makes a safety issue for the aviation side when you have somebody green on green?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I
is it
do.
is it in the decision making, or is it in the not knowing how to operate in the aircraft? Like what, I guess
So,
what makes it an unsafe to
yeah,
you?
to me, well, I can give you an example, and this is going to be a touchy subject because it involves crashes and fatalities.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, that's the realization of our job. I
Absolutely.
worked at a company that unfortunately did have a fatality, had a fatal crash where the whole crew perished. And not mentioning it or getting too far into it, but there's NTSB reports for a reason. You can read them, and there's a reason why we make
Mhm.
changes because it's all laid out in the NTSB report. But every person on that aircraft had less than a year of experience, including the pilot and HIMS. There was no experience to say, wait a second, what we're doing, we're cutting corners, or we're not even realizing that we're cutting corners, or we're doing something that maybe isn't industry accepted and we don't realize it because we don't have enough experience. So I think if you have a really experienced pilot, sometimes you can get away with it because they know the operations. They're going to make safe decisions. But when the whole crew is green, including the pilot, you just open yourself up to making decisions that you maybe don't even know could be dangerous. And so, yeah, I absolutely think it can be a safety thing. I think it can be pretty obvious. Hey, don't walk into the tail rotor. Like, that's an
Right.
obvious one. Don't walk around the
Right.
back of the aircraft. But it's those more nuanced decisions like, is this really a safe weather call? Or are you used to finding obstacles in the dark with NVGs? It's the little things that still take time to learn. And then you have to bring in crew resource management where how do you communicate it with the crew? And so again, there's the pressure of being new to the medicine and new to the flight side. So it's not that anybody is not smart or can't learn these things. Everybody, and this line has an
Mhm.
aptitude for it, I would say. But it's just not even putting you in the situation to not know what you don't know yet.
Right. And I think that we had, well, not we particularly, but one of our sister companies recently had a crash, and it really had a rippling effect throughout numerous different flight services. Because even here, 200 miles away from the crash site or the company, we found people that were, knew certain people that were on that aircraft, and they were scared to fly after that. So there was that time of us from a leadership standpoint having to be understanding of that and going, I get it. If this feels unsafe to you, everybody's got to say yes to go. And it just takes one to say no. And of course, that's the three to go, one to say no that we've known for years. But when
Mhm.
you have a bad event like that, it kind of amps up that uh awareness, I guess would be the right word, for everybody looking for every little thing that's gone wrong. And it was just a strange time to watch all the people that I thought of as really great flight clinicians go through that season of like, I am scared of this. It really brought the realization of like, oh, these people could actually die doing their job. And we don't think of it like that, but that's
Mhm.
that's the reality of it, like you said. So I'd never lived through anything like that where there was that fear of flying all of a sudden from our providers. And that was very heavy to me. It was not something I would think I was prepared for, in the sense that their mental health was affected by something that happened, what felt so far away, but also so close because we had connections to those folks.
Which
So,
is totally valid. And I
mhm.
think even when you don't have an incident, you can just one day wake up and be like, all of a sudden I have this fear. And I think sometimes you can't control it. And that's why it's good to know what your options are, what your resources are. And even sometimes when it's time to step away, I think it happens more than people realize because everyone leaves for whatever reason. It's not always public. But I do think a lot of experienced clinicians sometimes all of a sudden have that feeling like, wait, I'm not infallible in this flying metal can. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
I just don't want to have to risk it. Now, obviously, there's a risk anytime, you even get in an ambulance or drive your car, but it's a little
Sure.
bit different when the repercussion is catastrophic oftentimes when something doesn't go right. So that is something we have to acknowledge. And I think sometimes we tend to be really careful, whether with an incident, when we lose somebody in the field, as we should be very cognizant and respectful of these situations and their families. And we never should jump to conclusions, especially before there's an NTSB report. But we're immediately going to start feeling our feelings when we know that somebody is hurt or injured or has lost their life. And I think that everybody should be allowed to feel that to the extent they need to, because if you try and push someone who's feeling like that, I think it would only lead to them ultimately leaving when they don't feel ready. So good on you for acknowledging that and working through it with your
Yeah.
coworkers. And
And it's not also not a safe thing for, and I wanted to say this, but it's also not a safe thing for leadership to push the crews to make a flight decision. That should be on the crews. And if they feel unsafe for whatever reason, whether it's their mental health's off, just recently I was sitting down having lunch with one of the pilots, and he told me, he's like, I noticed that this, because he knows about all the mental health stuff that I'm involved in. And he said, I noticed this guy on our crew was having really, he was completely distracted. He's like, I didn't know why. So I sat down and talked with him. And he said, I realized that his mental health was a safety concern for the operation of my aircraft. He said, and I put us down. He's like, I'm not doing it. And I kudos to that guy, because it really takes a lot of courage to walk up to somebody who is easily distracted and say those things. But he was looking at it from a standpoint of, this is our lives that I'm carrying in my hands every time I take that helicopter up. So kudos to that pilot. But I think that type of mentality, if we could get that to spread across all EMS, all fire, all police, we would have people that were more focused and concerned about, maybe not drilling home that, oh, you're going to die in this job, but the potential is there for all of those first responder and even healthcare now, with all the physical violence that
yeah,
nurses and RTs and in-hospital staff are seeing. That potential is there. So when you see somebody that's having that off day, question what that's about. Be caring and compassionate with it, but definitely question what that's about, because that could be an effect down the line for everybody involved in those patients' care. And you're right there next to them. You don't know what somebody's thinking or doing. Kudos to that pilot. I thought that was a really good handling of that. And when you brought that situation up, I really wanted to hit home that it's not appropriate that we're forcing people to make a flight decision, and that we have to be cognizant of people's emotions and how they're reacting to something, because that can be a safety threat for all of us.
yeah, I think there has been a good shift in our industry, even in the past decade, of just really like pushing safety. And obviously, like you can mitigate all day, and there's still some factors you can't control.
Hmm.
And there will be accidents. Unfortunately, can never be 100%. But I do think like we have done a good job as an industry of holding each other accountable, like calling out behavior if it doesn't seem safe. And it's not for wanting to be like, well, my company's safer, because it's not, that's not that it's better. We want everybody to be safe. We want everybody to come home at the end of the day. So I think there has been a really good shift. And even just like in this podcast, wanting to highlight mental health, and like that's you wanting to help the community as a whole. And I
Hmm.
think there has been a really good shift from safety and mental health standpoint. Both like those two things do go together. So I think I see good progress.
I can definitely say in the last 10 years that both mental health and safety have taken the right strides, because I can remember way back 15 years ago, where there was a lot of push that, like, oh, you have to go on this flight. You have to do this. You have to do that. And I think some of that has gone away after we've seen unfortunate incidents because of those type of decisions.
For sure.
So I used to watch, changing subjects. I used to watch every live that you did. I really enjoyed all your lives. And one of the things that you do, not just in your lives, but in your TikTok videos, you're always very humorous. Like you love a good laugh like the rest of us. I would see you like goofing off with your partner, or you'd be in the ambulance, with some of the ambulance crews that were there at your air station, and you were just goofing off. And I loved that about you. I loved watching your content because of that. Even when I was going back through researching you to have you on the show, I even got some laughs from some of the stuff that you're doing. And or some of the editing that you do to your videos. I really like all the things that you do. I think you have a great outlook on life. So
Thank
where'd
you.
that coping mechanism come from? Where'd you get this laughter's the best medicine kind of mentality? Was it from childhood or something
Yeah.
else?
No, I think so. I think like it's a little bit of dark humor that a lot of us have. I think it comes from life perspective though, because when you do this job, you just see how fallible we are. Like at any
Hmm.
point, it could be over, and we're all doing the best we can. We're trying to have a meaningful, purposeful life, but we're also trying to enjoy it at the same time. And so I'm a realist for most things, and so a lot of my humor, I just like tend to take the realist perspective, which some people appreciate and some don't. But yeah, I just like the thing that somebody's not gonna say, I'm probably gonna say it, and then we can talk about it after, you can ignore it, but, like, I don't know. I kinda see life for how it is, and it's not always black and white as much as we would like it to be, and so I just think humor makes it a little better. Also, we work long shifts with our partners, and they have
Oh
to be
yeah.
around us, and I'm not saying I'm always the best partner, I come into work and have the best attitude. I try to be cognizant, though, that, like, we have to spend a lot of time around each other, and I wanna be a partner that somebody knows they can trust, but also knows they don't have to be, like, constantly worried about what they say around, and they can joke, and we can still laugh, and we can still
Yeah.
do a good job and be professional. Like, you can do both things.
Yeah. And I think that's, let me think, 2 episodes before yours air. I interviewed a therapist in training that does a lot of like mental health content for first responders on all the social media platforms. And we interviewed her, and she gets to talking about these coping mechanisms. And our dark humor is actually a clinical coping mechanism that is accepted by psychiatrists around the world. Like that's one of the things that we do best. And I always say that I hate that Kim is not with us on these shows because she is, man, dark humor is her love language. And I that but those kind of things when we give the dark humor, outside people just don't understand that. And
For
people
sure.
will look over us or think we're nine kinds of crazy or look at us like we have three heads. And but to us, that's just a normal conversation. Like we don't think deeply into that. Like you wouldn't have thought like, what's my coping mechanism unless I said, hey, what's your coping mechanism?
For
Where
sure.
because it's just a normal day to us. Us being humorous is what we do.
We can
Do you
totally side.
have
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say,
no,
okay,
no,
I was gonna take
go
you on a
ahead.
little side quest again if
Yeah,
you
let's
want.
go. I
Okay, so
love it.
for one, I grew up with 3 older brothers. So, like, I don't know if that changes it, but, like, just definitely
Yes.
different life perspective and on humor and everything and, like, surviving childhood. But I also grew up in a very, very religious household.
Mm,
And, that definitely changes the way that you view life when you think, like, certain things are gonna happen based on, like, your behavior or, how good of a person you are, and so I sometimes wonder if, like, humor is a way to deal with things that you th don't know how to process as a child when you're learning really adult things, like, about your fate, like, your eternal fate.
yeah.
Which we could
So,
probably dive way off into that, but I do
yeah.
think that when you're like, being taught things that are, like, kinda shaping your whole worldview as, like, a child, and you really don't sometimes know, like, you're sometimes even in fear, like, of, "Oh,
Hmm.
what if I do something
Oh
wrong?"
yeah.
I definitely think that has made me the adult I am on looking at life how I do and just being grateful to be alive and enjoy it and kind of shaped my humor for sure.
Yeah, we were a very religious household too, and I was an older brother. I didn't have any older brothers. I was the eldest
You were
of,
the one doing the
yeah,
tormenting.
I was the tormentor, yeah. And one of the things that I can deeply remember that probably shaped mine and my sister's humor is I had convinced her, because I was a football player and had played either summer league baseball or football throughout most of my childhood and into adolescence. And I convinced her that I needed to practice my tackling. And of course, she's gullible. So she's holding a pillow in front of her like this. And I mean, I hit that arm just right and I snapped it in half.
Oh,
And
no.
the brother in me is like, no, 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 you're not hurt. You're not hurt. Don't cry. Don't cry. I
Mhm.
literally, because we were and this ties everything together kind of, because we were such a deeply rooted religious household and Southern Baptist at that, I was told that because I was mean, I was in danger of going to hell. And just like,
Mhm. That's a
how do we
lot.
get how do we get that far? You know, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but obviously our arms broke, but it's going to heal. I don't think I'm going to go to hell for it.
Yeah, you
Uh,
weren't, like,
but
trying
it
to
was one
kill
of
your
those
sister.
situations where I was almost forced to have that repentance. And
Mhm.
so it really, that deeply rooted religious household kind of drove me away from church for a while and drove me away from religion altogether for a while. And it wasn't until I found something on my own terms that kind of fit what I was looking for. So, you know, I guess non-denominational is a denomination, but I had to find something that was very non-traditional,
Mhm.
non-denomination, something that I was not accustomed to as a child, because if I saw any hint of like that kind of Southern Baptist type of attitude, I would immediately run away. Didn't want any of it. So I think religion plays a huge part on the way that we
Well,
grasp things and
it
how you
does,
were
and it plays
raised.
for one, it does play a huge role in mental health because a lot of people are walking around with religious PTSD. That's
Oh,
a real
absolutely.
diagnosis, and that affects how we interact with the world around us, but at the same time, a lot of people who have completely lost their belief in religion or God, um, their mental health also suffers where they feel like they don't have hope in something. And so, like, not getting off into like a crazy sensitive topic of religion or whatnot, but a lot of a motivating factor for people who feel whether it's nihilistic or they feel pessimistic or just not really
Hmm.
sure where they belong in life, a lot of that disconnection between like wanting to stay alive is the loss of hope. And it doesn't always have to necessarily be God, but that's a major mental health factor for people when they feel like they don't have hope in something. So it's hard though, because when you grow up really religious, we do tend to 180 and do the opposite.
Hmm.
But that's part of, like your personal identity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everybody's got to have something to believe in, whether it is a higher power like you seem like and I seem like, that God is ours, but it can be a number of things. But everybody's got to have that something that they believe in. And once that's gone, you find that loss of hope that you talked about. So I think that's a really good rabbit trail. We could stay on that one
I
for a
know.
while.
Well, look at what
I
we do.
love the
Our
sensitive
whole goal
topics.
is to preserve life, right? So
Yeah,
we obviously find sanctity in a human life,
absolutely.
but our goal is to help them. So I wouldn't say like, you have to have a reason why that's your motivation that we do this job. What it doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily have to be God. Like you can have your own, but clearly there's something in you that values life and being alive, which is why it is so heartbreaking when we see the suicide rate in our field
Hmm.
and the loss of hope when we're literally out here trying to help others. So like we definitely have to
Hmm.
help ourselves first because it's tragic when there's no more hope.
Yeah, it's like that oxygen mask that drops out of the top of the plane when it's in
Mhm.
a bad spot, you know? You gotta put it on yourself first before you can help
Yep.
anybody else.
Yeah,
So we've gotta
exactly.
take care of ourselves a little bit. And I think one of the things we found through, so this is episode 11 of our show. One of the things we found by going through the last 10 episodes is there is a common factor of people not focusing on themselves. And I think that we see that time and time again. We focus on the problem, or we let the job become our identity, or we have all these other things. But if we just take a minute to sit back, and this is something that after years of counseling, my counselor has to remind me all the time, that you have to take a little bit of time for yourself. You have to sit back and kind of hear yourself, even though none of us like to sit with ourselves for any amount of time.
Yeah.
It's extremely helpful. So I think that that's a big piece of that, and kindness have been two of the biggest pieces of almost every show we've done, whether it gets brought up in just conversation like this, or whether it's something that's on the guide that I send out before every episode. It's always something that gets brought up, that kindness is free and we have to take a little time for ourselves and let us feel. And it's okay to feel sometimes. It's okay to say, I didn't like that, or that tan line from that Birkenstock bothered me, or
Mhm.
all those things are okay to admit and sit with for a minute and kind of let it sink in as to what we do, because what we do is heavy. What we do is hard some days and mentally taxing. Maybe not to the point of breaking down or having some kind of
Mhm.
episode or crisis, but certainly we really do heavy mental work. I mean, we're not digging ditches, but what we do has a difficulty to it that is above most jobs.
Yeah, most people, they have one or two life-altering events. But for
hmm
us, we're present for somebody's life-altering event every single day. Just to put
Yeah.
into perspective.
The actual statistic is, and I read this the other day and shared it on one of the episodes, but the actual statistic is that a normal person that lives to the age of 85 will have 7 to 8 traumatic events throughout their lives. First responders will have 400 plus in a 10 to 15-year career.
I'm
So,
glad you have the actual statistic on that because I was trying to remember what it was, but I'm
yeah,
like, it's
but
definitely disproportionate.
I found it so interesting because if you start thinking back, and I've done this with myself, if you start thinking back and you go, I've forgotten more than I remember.
Hmm.
Like, I've probably run 1,000 or more. I don't know the number. I'm just throwing a number out there, but I've probably run a bunch of calls and can only remember the top 25 that you just kind of place in those categories. Or somebody will say something, or and this happens to me all the time. You run into an old partner and they start, oh, you remember that time? And you're like, I don't remember that time at all. And that happens a good bit. So I find myself reminding myself that it's helpful for me to remember that you've forgotten a lot of that traumatic stuff.
Yeah.
There's those few that stand out, but really you've processed a lot of what you've been through.
Yeah. Which is
So
good.
those
We should.
four or 500, you've processed a good bit of them.
Yeah.
The 3 or 4 don't feel as bad when you think of it on a large
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah, exactly.
So I really like everything that you do. I've said that. I keep saying that because I just think you're a cool person. I think that you're
Thank you.
natural on camera. Everybody's looking for authenticity, and I think that you have that level of authenticity when you make a video that make people feel like you're just a normal person. And you are a normal person, but we get in this celebrity with a little C mindset, as Shade Tree Cardiology told me. He said he was a celebrity with a little C. And we get into this celebrity mindset that, oh, that's Flight Nurse Shay. She's got 200 whatever thousand followers. She's something super special. But really, everybody that we've interviewed just winds up being normal folks like me and you.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And you
And
seem that way.
I would never make an illusion that I don't go through the same struggles, that I'm a perfect person, that I've not made mistakes and struggled with my own issues. And I mean, we could talk about that forever too. Like, I would never think that I'm above anybody else in any circumstance, or that I, for some reason, you even question a little bit of like, do you deserve to have a platform, and feeling like, in that case too. So I'm grateful anytime I can post and it resonates with somebody, or there's like a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
education and someone's like, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. I do view that as a privilege for sure. And try and be transparent and authentic. And I am someone that does struggle a lot with like own personal perception. And if I've done something in my life that like I don't feel proud of, I would feel shame over it. I'd have to talk to a therapist about it, like, greatly. And so just working in such a tough field, you do question sometimes, like, do I even deserve for someone to be somebody that somebody looks at and is like, would want to learn from? And so it takes a little bit of time to just be like, okay, if I'm going to put myself out there, you have to be okay with yourself and just accept that
Mm-hmm.
people will either resonate or they won't. And that's okay. But online can be brutal.
Brutal.
People, and some of the
Brutal.
worst people are your own peers. I'll tell you
Yeah.
what.
Brutal.
They will judge
Brutal.
you the hardest. They really will. And so it's like, if you're going to put yourself out there, then you just have to be willing to take it back a little bit. And I would never post something and be like, I'm 100% right. I would love for someone to be like, actually, I read a study that says you're wrong. And
Yeah.
I'd be like, cool, let's
Yeah.
talk about it. Or you know what I mean? But yeah, it's a huge vulnerability, and it has affected my mental health at different times, having a platform, and you have to reevaluate what your motivation is. And when I started mine, it was never because I was like, I want 1 million followers. I just was like, oh, this is a cool platform. I wonder if people want to know about flight nursing. And it like blew up. And I realized there's a whole bunch of people that wanted to get into flight but never had access to a mentor, and I thought it was super cool how easily social media provided that, because I had to look physically in person for a mentor, for someone to help me when I was getting into flight. So I just think social media, whether it's listening to different podcasts, it's such easy access to mentorship, to education, and I think the EMS field has really, really grabbed a hold of it
Mm.
and utilized it in a great way.
And I get a lot of our guests from social media, and I've said this before, but the reason that I do that is because I think it's the best form of communication we have today. You can communicate with literally millions of people with just an upload,
Isn't that
and
crazy?
that's nuts. That is so nuts.
Sometimes
And I
I
think
think of, like, the views on a video I have, and I think about if all those people were, like, in one place watching my video, I'm like, "Oh, that's scary."
if you
Yeah.
put them in a stadium somewhere, it'd be a stadium full of people for some of your videos, and that's wild.
It's so weird to think about.
But you've become the unofficial flight mentor for many, many people.
Mm.
Read through your comments sometimes, especially when we were getting ready for this. And I was like, man, she has really affected a lot of people by what she said. Do you ever sit back and think about that and kind of go, wow, I have become this powerful voice that I didn't even know was possible?
I do, I feel grateful because if you're gonna try and get to a goal, I'd rather help you get to it, not like in the most straightforward way. And I truly think the people that are supposed to be in those places are going to earn it. So if I can tell you what you can do to try and earn it, why not?
Yeah.
And
Why hide it?
honestly, like the coolest thing is somebody will maybe reach out for a little bit of advice, and like a couple years later, they'll be like, "Hey, do you remember talking to me? I just got my first flight job," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's so awesome!" So it just is really cool. I mean, I was in their position at one point, being the new person and like wanting direction. And I had people in person that helped mentor me. And I'm very grateful for the people that impacted me when I was, I say younger, because I started flying when I was 24. So I was still super young.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool, like to just help give just even a little bit of advice or access to information that is just kind of like in a niche. I really enjoy it. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things about social media, it's more so for women, and I promise I'm not doing this on purpose. I don't go out and find just the pretty girls to be on our show. They're just always the ones that are out there and big voices. But I ask all the females this: how do you deal with the creeps? Because anytime you start getting that amount of followers, you're going to have the really creepy folks that come in there and just say all kind of stuff. I don't understand it. I've never been that way, never have a
Mhm.
desire to be that way. Don't think in that realm, I guess. But how do you deal with it? Sophie just blocks them all. She
Yeah,
just goes
I
through
do too.
blocking.
I mostly block them. Yeah, I try not to engage them either. Like, so there's a difference between people that just like to fight because it's fun, and there's a difference
Yeah,
between people
yeah,
that are creepy. Like, if you're creepy or inappropriate, there's a time and place for certain conversations, and then there's things that you should never say to people, and people need to
yeah.
learn the difference. Creepy people, I just block them normally. I mean, I feel like I've never been propositioned more to, like, sell pictures of my feet and stuff, and I don't know where on my platform I put that that was, up for up for sale, but, it's just, like, bots and random creepy people that are just, like,
Yeah.
curious.
I mean, I'm not getting any requests for pictures of my feet. However, 9.99 will get you the best picture you've ever
But you know
seen.
what I'm saying? If for some reason EMS fails, then maybe I'll pivot with
Then maybe.
not creepy people, people that just kinda wanna be confrontational. I try to take a very specific approach. Our default is to wanna be defensive. Our default is to wanna, like, just give it right back to them, and depending on the situation, I may make a funny comment back to someone if I know it's, like, a stupid comment, but if somebody's making an argument, like, for something educational I said, and they're kinda being, like, well, I can't say that word, kinda being, like, a little mean about it, and not really approaching it in the nicest way, typically, I try to re-engage them with calmness, kindness, like, you talked about before.
Mhm.
And usually, if they're willing to engage me and I stay respectful, even if they're not, by the end of it, we can usually find some kind of common ground. But it doesn't do any good for me to just be like rude and an a-hole back. I mean, like, unless what they said is inappropriate, then I just block them. That I don't tolerate. And if you look at my page, you'll see that I have creator content filter, whatever, on, because I do represent my work. My work has given me the privilege to post. I want to respect them and respect their company as well. And as long as I have that, I will always keep my page as professional as possible and keep it clean. I mean, that's a representation of myself and my job.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
definitely don't appreciate when people post creepy stuff or want to fight. But if you're willing to have like a conversation where you can be calm and respectful, we can dive into the medicine. We can dive into why we do stuff and don't do it. And I'll engage that all day, because I think it's better to model what a conversation with a peer looks like when one is being respectful and one isn't, to try and hopefully get to the same goal, because you could deal with that in real life. You deal with that with your partners and other people you work with.
And we say kindness is free, but it's really difficult.
It can be hard. Yeah.
Sometimes it's really difficult to remain kind. So I guess to kind of start closing it out, what changes can we make to change the culture where we're not approaching each other as a-holes all the time, and we're kind of having more respectful conversations? How do you get there? Because right now, you know, and you know this, there's some that will just walk up to you and hit you with all the noise right at once. I mean, very loud and boisterous, and just want to be that person that is always right. So how do you change the culture?
That's a good question. That's hard. A major culture change is difficult. I think just for one, accountability. Like I said before, sometimes I come in and I'm not in a great mood, or I'm not communicating how I should. And the biggest thing is to think about, is that really how I want to treat people or treat my peers? Apologize immediately. It's okay to apologize. It goes, like, for me, if someone was being rude to me, it would go 10 times further for someone to be like, I'm sorry, I'm just having a bad day. I shouldn't have spoke to you like that. And I would be like, cool, I literally will forget it and it'll go out of my brain. Than somebody that maybe just like faked nice all the time, but talked bad about you behind your back. Like, I just think, just be honest and be authentic and like be real with where you're at in your situation. I think that helps change the culture more, when you realize like, hey, it's okay to apologize and make a mistake. Like, nobody ever expects you to be perfect. And I'll accept an apology all day if somebody means it, because to me, I'm a huge intention person. And one of my favorite quotes, one of my coworkers' wives has this amazing quote, and her thing is, we judge other people off their actions and we judge ourselves off of our intentions, because we know what our intentions are. So we could always be like, but this is what I meant, and this is actually how I feel, but we don't know. We can only judge other people by their actions. So sometimes if we step back and we truly think about what were their intentions, even if that isn't how they came across, we would give each other so much more grace.
No, I love that. And I also think from the flip side of that, one of the things that I operate, especially my marriage in, is that perception is greater than intent. And from, so you talked about the side of receiving the apology and being the one that is aggressed against. Mine is usually that I didn't mean something the way it comes out, because sometimes, especially in leadership, good Lord, there are days where I just come home and I'm spent. You know, I just don't want to deal with anything. I'm just spent. And there's a lot of times where I will just say something that is not meant in any kind of way, doesn't have the intention behind it to say, you know, I hurt your feelings. But what matters is that relationship is now broken for a short time. Like, go and apologize, go and fix it, go and explain yourself. And then the other person from your side has the realizing that my intent was not to hurt your feelings. It would just come off wrong. So I think that's a double-edged sword that we can use both in both directions. So I like that. That really played well into me slipping that phrase in there. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a mental health standpoint, like in our industries, in the first response industry, how do you foster more of a culture of making mental health okay? I know we've acknowledged that it's made big strides, but we're still not there yet. And one of the things that I tend to concern myself with is I think we're on a path that we can't get out of. We can make all the changes now, but I think it's too little too late. So how do you think we begin to start to make the changes so that when we do have that, what I really think will be an implosion, we're prepared for it a little bit better to handle the next generation of EMS folks? or fire or police or whoever
Yeah,
you.
I think what hinders a lot of people from being honest about their mental health is the fear of judgment. And so the change really
Hmm.
comes from us just like being less judgmental, not being judgmental, being less judgmental. Because that's what we worry about. Like, do I look weak to my peers? Do they think I can't handle this? If I said I needed help, would they then be more suspicious around me and coddle me more? I think a lot of it comes from the fear of judgment. So it's just like, it just has to start at a base level where we cultivate making our peers feel okay, like coming to us and talking to us and knowing that that's not always going to make us mistrust them, but trust them more because they're being honest. I think it's really good. A lot of programs have peer support programs. My company has one,
Hmm.
and just so that people know that if you need to talk to someone, it's okay, and there's somebody available to talk to you that is a peer that understands what you're going through. Because unless you're going to sometimes a therapist that deals with first responders, sometimes it can be hard for even them to understand. We may traumatize them a little bit. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I
We've
just
talked about that.
yeah,
Absolutely.
totally. Just like I think having a peer support program is really cool too. But I do think it has to start usually from the top down. So like the organization has to set the tone that like we actually care about your mental health. And here's certain things we've put in place. For example, if you had a really tough call, like we're going to auto launch the peer support team, or if you had a really tough call, that's
Hmm.
going to trigger the manager to call you and do a check in with you. And you can say if you're okay or if you need
Yeah.
an hour, and we'll take you out of service for an hour instead of, wow, you
That's what
just
we
worked.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, or you just worked this really crazy call. By the way, I've got one waiting. Like, I think that it has to, like, the admin really has to model that, like, it's important in our
Hmm.
company. And then that way people feel more comfortable. Like, they won't be judged as much if they address it. So.
And I talked with a guest last week who is a nurse in New Hampshire, and she's also essentially my sister-in-law. And we were talking about how to change it on a system level. And I think that one of the things that, and this can be implemented anywhere, this is easy, but really having leadership sit in front of a meeting and discuss, have panel style interviews where you're sitting up there and you're discussing mental health and they see what they think of as respected leaders, whether it's, and we were talking on a system level inside of a hospital, but whether it's your patient care coordinators, whether it's your charge nurses, whether it's your even upper leadership from that, your managers, your supervisors, to just hear those people say, yeah, me too. I've been through that, or I've, had to go to counseling, and making that more of a topic of comfort versus a topic that makes you go, ooh, they're not going to make it. Because how many times have you heard that? Oh, they're not going to
Yeah,
make it
they can't
if they
handle.
struggle with
Which,
one
and to be fair,
particular
some
call.
people aren't the right fit and they can't handle it,
Mm-hmm.
which is why you should have a really good in-doc program that helps them decide that before
Yes.
they're out there on their own. But yeah, no,
Yes,
some like
absolutely.
that, the people that this is really for them and they want to do this job, yeah, have the resources available so that we don't lose people because they just didn't know where to go to, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this has been good. Well, I really thank you for joining me. I think
For
we've had
sure.
some good conversation. I think your insights are great. I think you've become the unofficial mentor for Flight Everywhere. So
I
we
appreciate you
appreciate
having
what
me.
you do on your social medias. Tell us what those are.
Oh, sure. Okay, so TikTok is my main public one. It's Flight Nurse Shay. I do have other ones that are more private. If you go to them, I tend to do like accept most people in the field, but my messages are open. Like, you can always shoot me a message if you have a question. I did just launch a new platform that I'm really excited about. So I've done mostly short form, like on TikTok, but my good partner Ryan and I just launched a new YouTube called The Crew Table. And
Oh, okay.
our main focus with this is to unite over food. And so we go into the program and we, depending on the location, try and cook a meal together of whatever like the local cuisine is. So like we'll rent an Airbnb with like a nice kitchen and we'll all sit and we cook a meal together and then we'll allow them to share stories, like we'll film with the program, what makes their program unique. And so that's been really cool because it's really fun for us to build our community and meet people, but
Yeah.
it's nice for people to let their guard down. And a lot of what happens in EMS is like you get back from a call and you're like, I'm starving, and you sit down at the table and you decompress the call while
Mm-hmm.
you're eating. And so we thought it would be really cool to try and integrate food into community because that's a lot of what we do. And so
That is
far
really
we've
cool.
yeah, it's been so fun so far. It's something I hope will continue to grow because ultimately we would really love to give back and like be able to
Yeah.
like buy food for everybody where we go and like support the local businesses that you guys are eating at all the time. So we filmed with Boston Medflight. Their episode just came out a couple days ago. We've done the mobile ECMO team in Minnesota, and we're currently filming with Air Care in Georgia. So cool insight into just like different programs. Doesn't have to be an EMS company like we did the
Yeah.
mobile team and stuff, but any like first responder healthcare personnel, like we're open to coming and trying to share a meal with you guys. So that's on the crew table. And then the last thing is I do have a course called Path to Flight. There's a
Yeah.
link like on my link tree in my YouTube. So it
Yeah.
has some really good classes in there, like how to handle your flight interview, introduction to aviation, airway, just different stuff like that. But the best part about it is you get access to my Discord channel. And in Discord, we do case reviews. So, like, anytime somebody wants to share a call, we can talk about it. Or we'll do like case reviews with each other. Or if you have a question like, oh my gosh, I just got my first flight job. Have you guys seen this certain thing? There's a lot
Mhm.
of mentors in there that can help as well. So lots of fun stuff. Yeah.
That is a lot. I love that idea of the crew table thing. That is,
Thank
I knew
you.
about all the other stuff, but I had not found the crew table. So that's even
Yes,
information to me.
it's new. Our first episode really just came out like a month ago. So we're only on episode 2. So we're new, but
I'm
yeah,
going
definitely
to go
trying to
watch
grow.
that. That is
Yeah, maybe
such a
we need to
fantastic
come
idea.
check your program out.
Yeah, come on. We would love to have you.
That would be fun. Yeah,
Memphis
we'll
is a
definitely
big
have to
enough
chat about
place with
that.
enough Airbnbs that we can find you
I
somewhere.
think we probably could, right? Oh, you know what was interesting?
Yeah.
Before we end this, I was gonna say this earlier, but one of the most interesting things I have found from working in different places. So I grew up in New York. I was an EMT in New York and like even going through college. Then I moved to Arkansas, worked all like in the South through the different southern states. And now I'm in Minnesota and there is truly subcultures and how people handle things
Oh.
differently, how they communicate differently. And at this point, having
Mm-hmm.
moved all over, I don't even know what I resonate with the most, but you do kind of have to be cognizant of the area you're at and how people communicate because it can be very different what's accepted and how people really will show you like if they're okay or not okay. Like it definitely varies depending on where you're at. And I just kind of think that's interesting.
That is very interesting. We talked about this. My sister-in-law and I, her name's Michaela, like I said, New Hampshire. So she was comparing the difference because up until they moved there, she had been on one travel assignment to like Dallas. So very
Mm-hmm.
much still the South, very the same. You know, she's from middle of Mississippi, like I am, down around Grenada area. And when she got up there, she was just like, this is so different. This
Mm-hmm.
is a different group of people.
Yeah, like
And
sometimes
she
when I
loves it.
communicate what might be normal in New York, someone else would be like, what are you mad at me? No, not at all. It's just direct. So yeah,
Yes,
just sometimes keep in mind where people are from too when you're dealing with,
I took just a
perception.
few months of a break from EMS, probably 2013, I think it was, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna go drive a truck." So I went and did that. I got my CDLs, all that stuff, and went to New Jersey. And this lady at this whatever it was like a warehouse of some kind. And she's just like, "You go right down F in there and take a F and left turn and F in this and F in that." And I was like, "Do you kiss your mama with that mouth?" And she was like, "Yeah, what's
Yeah.
it to you?" I mean, just very New Jersey. And I was like,
Holy
"Oh
moly.
my, this is a different
Yeah.
place."
What
And
culture vibe.
I just always remember that memory of that lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she was not mad. She was not having a bad day. That was just the way she talked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
once I got
exactly.
to have kind of a quick conversation with her, she's like, "This is just the way we are." I was, all
All
right.
right then.
You know, a Southern Baptist little boy driving a truck up there felt like
Yeah.
I actually might go to hell after listening to her.
That's funny. Oh
It
gosh.
was not good, but it's a different set of people.
For sure.
But again, thank you. You've been fantastic. I really love talking to you.
Same,
You
yeah.
know, I say that I'm doing this podcast for you guys that listen, and I am. That was my whole reason for starting it, so that we can make mental health more of a topic that we're comfortable with, giving you guys a safe place to land when something goes wrong, and that you can reach out to us and know that somebody else is with you. But guys, I'm really getting to live a dream myself, because I'm getting to talk to all my favorite EMS heroes and my fire heroes and all the people that I've watched for years. And Shay, you're one of those. So thank you for accepting my invite to come on our show. You've made my day, and I'm sure your episode will make many other listeners' days. So thank you for being so open and honest.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. It was so nice to chat with you and get to know you better as well. And thank you for doing this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys want to check out our website, we definitely have that, asilentwarwithin.com. We're also on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You can find us just by searching A Silent War Within. So I think that's it for today, Shay. Again, thank you. And as always, be safe, take care of your mind, and we'll talk soon. Goodbye, everybody.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.